Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us on News at Prime. Now, the Presidency has confirmed that security agencies are investigating death threats on Director-General Phindile Baleni after she allegedly received a letter and a bullet in her mailbox. Forensic expert Dr. Gerard Labaskhani says making this public was ill-advised.
I'm really surprised the Presidency made this press release. I probably think it's the worst thing they could have done. Well, firstly, police investigators, I can guarantee you right now, are pulling their hair out, the fact that this was done. You've given the threat and credibility. You've given them status. You've let them know that the highest office in the land knows of your threat. That's a lot of power that you're giving to the person who's made this threat. So you're boosting their ego. You've divulged incredibly investigative, sensitive information. I mean, there's no reason to tell the world that this person has received a threat. I mean, daily, senior people in government probably receive bizarre, unusual, threatening communications. You've mentioned the delivery method, where it was found, what was found. You've actually displayed a picture of the exhibit and the bullet. For any investigator, I can't imagine this press release came with the authorization or knowledge of the police investigator. And this is a police investigation at this point in time. They are in charge of what should be released in the media and not. So I think it was a bad decision, unfortunately.
Sure. Labaskhani adds that there may be more to the threat.
The content of the letter, yes, we always look at the content. You cannot ignore the content, but I don't get too fixated on what the content could be. This person could have just put anything in the letter, if your intention is to cause fear, you could have made it about state capture, whatever. Whoever receives this message is going to be fearful for their lives. You could have written gibberish, and the person would be fearful for their life if there's a bullet there. So I don't get too worried about, is this generally about state capture or not? Is this generally about the people whose trial that they refer to or not? You know, that might just be a bit of a smokescreen. Because we also have to look at who is sending this. I have three possibilities in terms of categories of people. You know, typically there's two. You have a genuine external person who's making a threat, and of course you have a person who states their own threats. And the police investigation would have to look at both those options. Here we might have a third option. I don't know, but I would assume the DG in the President's office would have close protection permanently, a static protection at the house and mobile protection when they move around. So my first question is, how did this threatener get so close to the DG in the Presidency's house, if there was close protection? You know, what were the close protectors doing? Were they sleeping, etc., which could comment on the quality of close protection. If she had close protection, I don't know. So that's my one concern about an external person getting so close to such a high-profile individual. The second one, if she did have close protection, could it be them? You know, you could have, as a possibility, I'm not saying it is the case, the close protectors, hence nobody saw anything.
Now, for more on this and threats against those fighting corruption, we're joined by author and whistleblower Athol Williams. A very good evening to you, Athol. Thank you so much for your time. As you perhaps may, I don't know how much you caught of the criminologist that was speaking to one of my colleagues, saying that anyone who receives a bullet is definitely going to be fearful in some form or the other. You're a whistleblower that has had to pay a heavy price. You left the country fearing for your life. As you perhaps stand on the outskirts and listen into the details around this matter involving Phindile Baleni, what is your view?
Paul, I really sympathize with her for having received this threat. Even as that criminologist says, perhaps people in government receive these types of threats all the time. I think still receiving any communication that suggests that someone has the intent to cause you harm and take your life, I think it's got to be a terribly jarring experience and something no one should endure.
Now, whistleblowers are seen in the public's eye as really courageous people who are standing for truth, but in standing for truth, there's often a very heavy price to pay where your life is threatened and you have to make very dramatic alterations to your own life for the sake of your protection. Talk to us about your experience. I mean, you were a witness at a state inquiry naming about 39 people and companies involved in a scandal, and your life turned upside down.
That's right, unfortunately. I think as much as people pat me on the back and thank me, and I appreciate those sort of gestures. The bottom line is very few people are willing to stand alongside me when I now face threats. And those threats come in a number of forms. There's just a threat to my livelihood in that no one will employ me. And for 2.5 years, I haven't had an income because companies seem unwilling to come near to a whistleblower. And then, of course, there's the actual physical threat. I testified before the Zondo Commission for 2 days. And at the end of the second day of my testimony, I got a call from an international NGO who works with whistleblowers across Africa. And they said to me, based on how I had pieced together the whole network of state capture and who the parties were involved, they said to me their experience is that I, just by virtue of having done that, face major personal risk. And on that day, on the 24th of March last year, suggested that I leave South Africa. And I couldn't process the fact that I would have to leave my home country. I understood I'd face risk, and I understood I'd face retaliation, but never expecting someone to want to harm me physically. And it's only until Babita Deokaran was sadly assassinated did I realize how real this threat is. And what finally pushed me over the edge to then pack up and leave my family behind was when a former senior government official wrote to me, sent me an email saying, Athol, he's got intelligence that I'm in the crosshairs, were the words he used, and that people are plotting to silence me. And it's this frightful thought that you've stood up and done something which the country should celebrate, but yet I was now being punished in the most horrendous way by having to live in fear and then actually run for my life. The sadness of that report was made worse by the fact that I've appealed so many times to the presidency, in fact, for support, for protection, and received absolutely no reply, let alone any help, but definitely no reply from them. I've written to Minister Gungubele, I've written, in fact, to the DG, Baleni, and written directly to the president. Not even a reply to my emails.
The irony, I suppose, is that South Africa does have a law to protect whistleblowers, but of course it's been criticized for not being robust enough in ensuring safety. Well,
the law works particularly well when you remain in the employ of the company in which you blew the whistle. And even then it's not perfect. But for someone like me and many of the others who do not remain in the employ of those companies and who we blew the whistle, the law provides very little protection. Right now, there is no protection against retaliation. So if companies want to sue me, if companies publicly and individuals publicly discredit me as they are doing every day, I've got no legal recourse to that. And likewise, I've got no physical protection. The fact that it is so known, the risk that whistleblowers face, the fact that our government makes no resources available for our protection shows to me a measure of lack of concern for the safety of whistleblowers.
How then do you believe that whistleblowers can be better empowered and protected in South Africa? I mean, what needs to change? And whatever it is, has to happen as a matter of urgency.
Well, it does have to happen as a matter of urgency and Paul. The key answer here is resources need to be made available. A lot of people talk about the fact that our law needs to change, and absolutely the law needs to change. But fundamentally, we need to make resources available for this protection. You know, at the State of the Nation address in February of this year, so that's 5 months ago, our president said that law enforcement agencies are taking the necessary steps to address the immediate concern that safety of whistleblowers, around safety of whistleblowers. That was the State of the Nation address in February. I've, as a whistleblower, heard absolutely nothing about these law enforcement agencies and the resources that supposedly have been made available to them. And neither have other whistleblowers. So it seems that our president, the presidency, our politicians, our government are quite willing to talk about the risk whistleblowers face, but absolutely not interested in putting resources behind it to actually provide that support and protection.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking about your experience there and weighing in on this conversation. Author and whistleblower by Athol Williams, speaking to us about his personal experience as a whistleblower and what he's had to endure.